Tell me a little bit about your background as a candidate and what made you want to run for this district.
Sure. Well, my background is a little bit different. I'm a first-time politician, and I'm 61 years old. I've never done anything like this before. My background is humble. I've lived in or very near the district my entire life. Grew up in a working class small town. I did go to college, first in my family, and I was in human services for 20 years. Child and family, also drug and alcohol treatment. I ended up going on to get a degree from Cornell when I was in my mid-40s, early 40s, and since then I've been teaching at IUP. So what brought me to this? My time in human services taught me a lot about working with people closely who were struggling with social problems and seeing the connection between that and poverty. My work at Cornell and since then has been focused on social policy. So I can draw very clear connections between the policies that we make at the state and congressional level and also the kinds of social problems that we have. And I'm running now because I've been watching what's happening in this district over the last 5-10 years and seeing increasing poverty, increasing social problems, but policies being made in Congress that are actively hurting this district. And I believe it can and should be different.
You tease ahead to my next question, which will be, what is the main focus of your campaign, of your platform? If you kind of had to
Sure.
brief summation of, what are the main things that you really want to focus on for Central Pennsylvania?
I'm seeing two for this district, and they're intertwined. First and foremost, I'd have to say jobs that pay a family-sustaining wage. We have the lowest unemployment we've had in a very long time, yet so many people are still wrestling here with tremendous poverty, and it has everything to do with the kinds of wages that they receive. But connected to that is also health care. The health care costs and the absence of health care insurance for people, and then all of the physical health and the social problems, and frankly additional poverty that comes from people unable to pay for their health care, so they go into debt and then often bankrupt or have other problems with it. Those are some of the biggest issues that I see. And the solutions that I see for it, interestingly, number one, I think, is access to high-speed broadband internet throughout the entire rural area. It's intimately tied with the information economy and business these days, and business cannot grow in an area where there is no internet. I also support local businesses, small businesses, locally owned, very strongly, and I think critical components of that are available access to low-cost loans. Accessing capital is a problem. I also think that there's a couple critical areas we could be developing: dairy processing and agricultural processing throughout the region, and also renewable energy supply chain. And then finally, healthcare. Healthcare impacts business, and I support, first of all, making changes to support on the temporary basis the Affordable Care Act and keep that propped up and keep people having access as much as possible. But I honestly think we need to move towards some kind of Medicare for all or some kind of universal payer system for everybody. All people should have access to health care.
Two things you brought up that I'm just looking for elaboration on
Sure.
a little bit more would be, one, the unification of an internet system. In Central PA, there are obviously a lot of rural areas. Myself, knowing I work in television, being in some of those areas.
Okay.
But how do you think, what are some of the best ways of implementing that in practice would be to get all of Central Pennsylvania, all of this area on the grid, so to speak?
Okay. Sure. The funny thing is that we've been here before as a country. This is the same issue we were facing with electrification back in the 30s. And what they did then and what I think we need to do now is a combination of a partnership between political will, particularly Congress, but also supports from state legislature, freeing up the money. And then secondly, working through the rural cooperatives. There are 4 that exist in the new 15th district, and there is no reason we couldn't be using them. The one that's in my part of the district, REA in particular, is already poised to begin to do the work of laying the lines throughout the region. But they can do this, they're willing to do this. What's blocking us right now is partly political will and the money connected with that, and also the big telecoms who are not interested in seeing the region developed. But we don't have to wait for them.
Gotcha. The same thing would be the renewable energy.
Sure.
How would you say Central PA is doing in terms of, compared to the state, compared to the nation, in terms of their initiatives towards renewable energy?
I think that we are poised to do some amazing things for renewable energy, and I don't think we're there yet. And I think that there's energy production itself, and so you see lots of signs of that, such as the wind turbines in many parts of this region in particular. But there's a whole nother set of opportunities that exist. Specifically, what I'm talking about is supply chain. Light manufacturing left this region quite a while ago and has not really returned. But with our history as an energy producer, we still have empty industrial spaces, we have geothermal, we have solar, and we could be using those spaces to create the parts that constitute the wind turbines, such as the motor parts, the housing cases. We could be working to put together microgrids, batteries. But I think in particular one other huge opportunity is that on this side of the district we have Penn State, on the other side of the district we have Carnegie Mellon, where there are engineers who are doing wonderful things with really moving in the direction of renewables, and I would love to see our local counties partnering with them and starting to put their prototypes into production.
The buzzword is taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, on the more progressive side, people believe different policies would call for a raise in taxes,
mm-hmm.
and on the conservative side, the message is we're cutting taxes. We're not going to get any higher.
Yep.
Could you address that as it relates to your platform?
Sure, absolutely. I think the question is, whose taxes are we talking about? Okay. So first of all, I am a huge fan of the tax cuts that came through 2017, specifically to working people. So people with very little income, even up to the 90% point overall in terms of income in the U.S. I think those taxes can and should be reduced, and I'm glad to see that they did that. I was not a fan that they made it temporary, but they have since corrected that, and so that's a good thing. What I'm not a fan of, though, is getting rid of taxes on capital gains for the extremely wealthy, and I'm also, interestingly, I am in favor of the corporate tax rate cut overall that came through. However, the problem for me is that they didn't address the tax loopholes. And you already have a number of big multinational corporations in particular that are still experiencing tremendous tax loopholes and not paying very much anyway to begin with, and then we're giving them a reduced rate on top of that, and I think that's a mistake. Keep the reduced rate for corporations, eliminate the tax loopholes though, and keep the tax cut for working people.
In regard to this election, I do have to ask you also, since
Sure.
obviously the challenger coming in facing incumbent
Yep.
Glenn Thompson, how are you feeling right now just about your place, where you stand in this election going into November?
When I took this challenge on, I was advised all over the place that this was a 20-point Republican district. There was no chance whatsoever, and honestly, the last two times in my home county of Indiana that I went to vote, there was no Democrat to vote for. There was only a Republican name on the ticket for Congress twice in a row. And that is just wrong in a democracy. If you don't have a challenger, you can't hold your incumbents accountable. If you don't have a challenger, you can't be debating ideas and identifying what the priorities are. And so I made the decision, even though they told me up front you're going to lose, I made the decision that running the race itself was worth it. But the funniest thing has happened. There has been a groundswell of energy I did not anticipate, I knew nothing about, that is rising up, and I think honestly has a potential to lead for some surprises. I speak specifically to the indivisible groups that are working very hard across the northern part of the district, the women's huddles that are out there, the change in sentiment of the women's groups in particular, the fact that in this district there are 4 counties that are brand new to the incumbent. He's not their incumbent. So things could happen.
That was going to be my next question too. This obviously being the first time that there be a race with this specifically drawn district.
That's right.
So does that change anything? You alluded to a little bit. Have you had the opportunity for any debate with Congressman Thompson?
Well, I've been available, and we have both been contacted numerous times, at least 4, by different counties' League of Women Voters, newspapers. I think there was one high school that invited us as well. And no, I have agreed to every single one of them. He has not. And I can't speak to why, obviously. I'm not inside his head. I can only tell you that one response to the Clarion League of Women Voters was that he was going to be busy in September and October.
Why, should not only Center County but Central Pennsylvania viewers who are going to be watching this, why should they give you their vote?
Actually, that's a very simple one. I mentioned in the beginning that there have been a number of policies and legislation that's been passed in Congress that don't serve the people of this district well. And I believe that Congressman Thompson is a good man. He's very pleasant. However, he has received a tremendous amount of money through corporate donations. And when you tease out and look at how he's voted in Congress and who has contributed to his campaign, you can see a direct line. I made the decision myself very early in the campaign that I was not going to take any corporate or corporate PAC money. I have honored that. I've not taken a penny. This has all been local, small, individual contributions from people. We haven't raised the $2 million that my opponent has, but we've run a good race, and we've done it the old-fashioned way through legwork and town halls and canvassing. And what people would know is that if they vote for me, they're actually getting a vote for someone who's going to represent the interests of the district, not the interests of the people who paid a lot of money to put him into office. I'm not beholden to them. I'm beholden only to and accountable to the people who live in the 15th district.